Hi, my name is Keith Beard and I'm the clinical social worker for the district. This school year, we'd like to focus on the importance of being trauma-informed when interacting with our students, families, and with each other. We want to change the question from what's wrong with you to what happened to you, and how can I use my knowledge of trauma, stress, and child development to be a supportive adult in my students' lives. A trauma-informed school takes care of all its students, families, and staff. Trauma can affect people of every race, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, gender, psychosocial background, and geographic region. Traumatic events that students may face at school and in their families and communities come in many forms and range from one-time incidents to experiences that are chronic or even generational, such as abuse, neglect, chronic bullying, exposure to family or community violence, or the cumulative and historical impact of poverty, racism, and discrimination. Often, traumatic events are unexpected. Individuals may experience the traumatic event directly, witness an event, feel threatened, or hear about an event that affects someone they know. Traumatic events may be human-made, such as a mechanical error that causes a disaster, war, terrorism, sexual abuse, violence, or they can be products of nature, such as flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, or pandemics. Sometimes just hearing about an event can be traumatizing. Our experiences shape how we see the world. Early positive experiences help us to see the world as exciting and full of opportunities. Early negative experiences help us to see the world as frightening and full of danger. We often won't know and don't need to know how or whether a child has been traumatized. We just need to understand the neurobiology of trauma and that it impacts a child's development, behavior, emotional state, and potentially their ability to learn. If we are in a state of hyperarousal, we might struggle to understand that y equals mx plus b and how this knowledge is or will be relevant. As a result, we might not pay attention to the lesson, let alone put any effort into understanding and practicing the concept. All behavior is communication. The behavior of a student, such as running out of the classroom or hiding under a desk or even flipping over the desk, might be adaptive and very effective for coping with an adverse experience. However, that behavior might not be as effective in a classroom. As we are thinking about students' behavior, look for the resilience. By having a better understanding of why a child might be acting a certain way, it can help us have empathy, which is important for building relationships with our students. The window of affective tolerance is a term coined by Dr. Dan Siegel that is now commonly used to understand and describe normal brain-body reactions, especially following adversity. It's a term used to describe the range in which a person can function most effectively. When people are within this zone, they are typically able to readily receive, process, and integrate information. Hyperarousal is characterized by excessive activation or energy, often in the forms of anxiety, panic, fear, hypervigilance, anger, and agitation. This keeps our system stuck on and impacts our ability to relax, often making it difficult to sleep, eat, and digest food, and optimally manage our emotions. Often the students that are most on our radar are in the state of hyperarousal as they may be externalizing their behavior. Hypoarousal may occur when we have too much hyperarousal, surpassing the pain and or emotionally overwhelming our body or brain, causing us to shut down or disassociate. In this state, our system can be stuck on off, characterized by exhaustion, depression, flat affect, numbness, disconnection, disassociation, etc. Hypoarousal impacts our sleep in that we may want to sleep all the time. This impacts our appetite and digestion and may make us feel emotionally deadened. In school settings, this can be misinterpreted for students that are unmotivated, disengaged, or don't care about learning. In the classroom, children's trauma symptoms are frequently misunderstood and misdiagnosed as attention deficits, learning disabilities, and emotional or behavioral conduct problems. This can lead to higher referral rates to special education. When in a state of survival or hyperarousal, a traumatized student cannot attend to or process information. If a student is in constant state of hypervigilance, a student can seem to be highly distractible and having difficulty paying attention, but they are actually focusing intently on aspects of the environment that just do not happen to be part of academic learning. Students that have experienced trauma may also have not had opportunities to develop self-regulation or coping strategies. Often, this results in intense emotional expressions in the classroom that can lead to difficulty developing a positive relationship with the students, time out of the classroom, or more suspensions or expulsions. As you can see, frustrating behaviors we see in children are often developmentally common ways of coping with trauma and stress. Situations that a child might over or underreact to can include things like sudden movements, loud noises, or physical contact. Increase in risk-taking behaviors might include starting to use alcohol or drugs or increased use of alcohol or drugs, increased or dangerous sexual behaviors, fights, self-harm, skipping school, or sneaking out. As children get closer to adolescence, their trauma or stress coping responses become easier to recognize because they become more and more like an adult reaction to stress and trauma. As you look at the list of responses, ask yourself how you react to trauma and overwhelming stress. How does it impact your functioning or ability to learn new concepts and skills? Trauma-informed practices are always a story of hope. What we definitely know is the importance of caring and supportive relationships. Not only do they buffer and mitigate the effects of stress, but these relationships promote healthy development and support learning. Science shows that children who do well despite serious hardship have had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult. These relationships buffer children from developmental disruption and help them develop resilience, or the set of skills needed to respond to adversity and thrive. Protective factors in a child's social environment and body interact to produce resilience and promote healthy development. We can be that supportive adult. It's beyond the scope of this video to give suggestions on how to address a student who's in the middle of a trauma reaction, but there are things you can do to reduce the likelihood of their occurrence and to help students when they begin to get overwhelmed. Most importantly, it's important for us to make sure that we are emotionally healthy and that we have the skills to handle our own stress and trauma. Our students watch us to see how we feel about them, but also to learn how to handle strong emotions. School is stressful and frustrating for both students and staff. Show and tell them how they can deal with those emotions in a way that is both pro-social and conducive to continued learning. Give them opportunities to reset or blow off steam before they feel like they can no longer control it. Be respectful and actively look for strengths in our students. Sometimes, because the attitude and behavior of our students is difficult, it might be hard for us to like certain students or a group of students. This is normal and it's nothing to be ashamed of, but it must be acknowledged and managed. Use empathy and humility to see students for what they are. If you continue to struggle with this, talk to your school social worker, teaching coach, or principal for more guidance. Finally, consult with your school social worker and/or counselor to see whether or not targeted intervention might be helpful or necessary. Trauma-informed educators in schools aren't about preventing bad things from happening. We often can't control that, but it's instead about making those things less activating. To be trauma-informed does not require that we know another person's trauma history. Knowing that stress and trauma impacts most, if not all of us, is critical to changing our mindset. Understanding the biology of stress helps track the pathways from childhood stress to undesirable behaviors and outcomes, and gives us insight into how we might interrupt those pathways and reduce harmful impacts. Often we ask, what's wrong with that person? Instead, it's important to change the question and ask, what's happened or what is happening to students, families, communities, and ourselves? This is one of the most fundamental changes we can make and opens our understanding. This can have a significant impact on our students' ability to learn and our ability to help them. Thank you for all you do. The school counselors and school social workers are here to support you and your students. Have a good year.